Instead, I'm going to tell you about somebody. See, when I grow up someday when I grow up, I want to be just like this guy. My hero. 10 points if you can tell me who this is. Bad guesses, go for it. No, it's not my daddy. Hint, it's Christmas. Oh, close. St. Nicholas, we have a winner. You get 10 points. The 10 points aren't worth anything. You just get 10 points. Get 10 points. Nice. This is St. Nicholas. And St. Nicholas, if the name sounds familiar, St. Nicholas is the person who Santa Claus is named after. And if you're going to be named after somebody, Nicholas is a good choice. Nicholas is the kind of person I want to be when I grow up. Now, this type of painting, this style of painting, is called iconography, and it's a particular symbolic kind of artwork that is used in some traditions of the church. And the idea when you look at an icon is not that you're looking at a painting. The idea is that you're looking through a window. You're looking through the painting to the person that you see there. And icons are intended to be an opportunity for us to be reminded of, to connect with people who lived our life of faith long before us, people who lived this life of faith well, people who very often, in this case, are called saints. Now, Nicholas was not born a saint. It's something that he became as he grew and as he learned and he walked with Jesus. So I want to tell you a little bit of his life story and then tell you some of the things that inspire me about him and then tell you why I want to be like St. Nicholas when I grow up. Nicholas was born in 270 AD or CE, depending on which of those you prefer. He was born in a small town called Patara, which is in what we now call the nation of Turkey. At the time, it was part of Greece. But regardless, at the time, it was under the thumb of the Roman Empire. The people in his nation were under the control of the Caesars, of the emperors of the Roman Empire, and under that military machine. Nicholas was the only child of wealthy parents. And I know there's a stereotype that goes with that you think that those people are going to turn out to be spoiled and selfish. But Nicholas's parents raised him well, and he made really good choices. He ended up being a really solid person. He followed Jesus. His parents taught him their faith. They were Christians. They taught him about life. They taught him about Jesus. They encouraged him to find his own way into faith in Jesus. But Nicholas's life wasn't always easy. His parents actually died when he was quite young. A plague came through their town and killed a lot of people, including Nicholas's parents. So when he was in his late teens or early 20s, he was on his own. He had a lot of money, but he was on his own. And I mean, that can be a recipe for disaster when you're young and on your own and you have like nothing but money. That can end really badly. But at that point in Nicholas's life, he had already heard the calling of God, drawing him towards becoming a priest, serving God in the church, serving his brothers and sisters in the faith, serving the world. Then later on in his life, he had another calling, and that calling was to become a bishop. And that's what this picture portrays. That's what this picture portrays. He's got these crosses on his shoulder. Those indicate that he is a bishop. And a bishop still cares for people, still looks after people and cares for serves people and serves God in the church. But a bishop is also responsible for caring for other pastors, for caring for other priests. It was not a soft job. And in that era, life for Christians was quite hard. While Nicholas was serving as a bishop, he actually outlasted 2 emperors and then died during the reign of a third. So when Nicholas became bishop, there was one emperor in power who allowed the church to do its thing, allowed Christians to worship Jesus the way they wanted to, and didn't try to force people to worship the Roman gods. But that emperor died, and another guy came into power. And this guy's name was Diocletian. Diocletian hated Christianity. I mean, he hated Christians. He hated the church just as much as Nicholas loved the church. Diocletian was emperor for about 20 years, and during those 20 years, he tried literally to wipe the church off the face of the earth, tried to get rid of all Christians, convert them back to the Roman God system. They tore down church buildings. They burned Christian scriptures and Christian writings. They tried to force believers to renounce their faith. If they wouldn't, they got thrown in prison. Some were tortured, some were killed. And Nicholas was not shielded from that just because he was a bishop. That was not going to get him off the hook. Nicholas himself was arrested under Diocletian's reign. He was in prison, and we don't know for how long. We just know that he was in prison for a time until after Diocletian died, and finally another emperor came into power. This one's name was, let me see if I want to say this right, Licinius. And Emperor Licinius canceled all of the hostile laws that Diocletian had put in place and declared freedom of religion for all. So Nicholas was released from prison, and he got back to work serving his people, helping the wounded, comforting the traumatized. He started rebuilding his church and his people. Nicholas lived a good life. He died in around the year 343, about age 73. He was laid to rest in a beautiful carved marble casket in the cathedral where he had served his people for all those years. Nicholas was pretty healthy for his age, for somebody his age in that era. He had a little bit of arthritis in his lower back, and at some point, he had a broken nose. I hear you asking yourself, how do we know St. Nicholas had a broken nose? Somebody ask. I'm glad you asked. Thank you. Because Nicholas was cherished, he was loved, he was respected. He was buried with care. He was laid to rest with care, and people kept watch over his tomb for a long time. They kept track of where his bones were. And not that long ago, the church where Nicholas was entombed gave permission to some scientists to scan his bones and to use imaging technology to recreate the actual face of St. Nicholas, which I think is absolutely fantastic. So this is the actual face of St. Nicholas. This is like, I love this. He lived like nearly 2,000 years ago, and there he is. This is his actual face. I think that's fantastic. And you may notice that his nose is a little bit crooked. They discovered that he had had his nose broken, possibly twice, and it wasn't set properly. How he got his nose broken is not actually known, but we're going to come to that in a few minutes. But this is the face of St. Nicholas. This is the face of somebody I want to be when I grow up. I've read the stories of his life. I've read the historic research into the things that he did and how he lived in his community. And this is somebody I want to be like. You may have heard some of these stories. The first story is the classic one where there are 3 sisters in a family The family does not have enough money, and they're in danger of actually having to sell their daughters into slavery because they don't have enough money. That was a real thing in those days. So Nicholas heard about this, and this was before he became a priest. This is when he was a young man. He had all this money. So what did he do? You may have heard this story. He waited until after dark. He took a bag of his own money. He sort of snuck through the streets to the family's house, went up to the window, dropped a bag of money through the window, and legend has it, it landed in somebody's shoe. So that's part of where, where Santa Claus gets his MO from. He dropped the money through the window. It landed in the shoe. And when they woke up the next morning, the family had enough money to keep one daughter out of slavery. So Nicholas, the next night, did the same thing. Took a bag of money, waited till everybody was asleep, snuck up, reached through the window, dropped the money in. And there was enough there for the second daughter to not have to be sold into slavery. Now, the third night, obviously, they're starting to wonder, where is this money coming from? So the father stays awake. He sits in the corner, like kids do on Christmas Eve, right? Because you're waiting, you want to see what's going to happen. So the father stayed in the corner and waited until that hand came through the window and dropped the money. And the father jumped up and ran out of the house, and he chased him down, and he grabbed Nicholas by the sleeve and said, "Thank you. Thank you for saving my daughters." And Nicholas said, "It's a gift from God. Just don't tell anybody it was me." That's the classic St. Nicholas story. Another story, later in life, when he was a bishop, he had already become a bishop, and he's got his palace, and he's got his robes, and he's just in his big old house, and he's showing hospitality to some people who have come to town because they want to come and visit the bishop because he has some status. So he's sitting there with these people in his home, and somebody comes to Nicholas and says, "Excuse me, there's something happening in the town square. There's some friends of mine who have been falsely convicted of a crime, and they are about to be executed. It's a death penalty case, and I don't know what to do, Bishop. I don't know what to do." So Nicholas jumps up, runs out of the house, leaves his guests sitting there, probably just like wondering what the heck just happened. So Nicholas goes running through the streets with his bishop's robes flapping around him, and he runs, and apparently he was yelling, "Are they still alive? Are they still alive?" So he gets into this square, and he pushes through the crowd, and he runs over to where the executioner is, and he grabs the sword from the executioner's hand, grabs it away, throws it on the ground. He tells everybody, "Don't do anything until I get back." He runs off to the judge's house, the governor's house, who had passed the sentence on these people. And he stormed into the governor's house, and he told him off. He told him off in like Roman, and I don't even know these big words, and you can look up the speech online because it's recorded. But he tells this guy off, and he rips a strip off him until the governor is saying, okay, I revoke the sentence. I won't do it again. I won't take any more bribes. Please pray to God for me to be forgiven. And these people's lives were saved by Bishop Nicholas. The third story is not quite so exciting. There's no sneaking involved, and there's no running, and there's no rescuing. But this one, I kind of envy him a little bit. Nicholas attended what was called the Nicene Council, held in the year 325. This was a really huge turning point for Christians. This was a huge turning point for people who believed in Jesus. Nicholas was one of about 300 church leaders who gathered and who traveled to get together to take time to sit down, to debate, to think about it, to think about Jesus, to come to an understanding of who do we believe that Jesus is. And this might sound boring to you. It doesn't sound boring to me because I'm a geek, but it might sound boring to you. But there is one legend that says that this council of theologians sitting around arguing about the Bible is actually where he got his broken nose. because he got in a fist fight with another theologian. So I'm just going to leave that there because that's not proven or anything, but that's one theory about how he got his nose broken. But at the end of this council, at the end of these discussions and prayer and debate, the end of their work was to write out and to sign one of the great creeds of the Christian faith, one of the great statements of what Christians hold to be true, what we believe most deeply. And it's called the Nicene Creed, and it begins, "We believe in one God, the Father, Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, of all that is seen and unseen. We believe in one Lord Jesus Christ, the only Son of God, eternally begotten of the Father, God from God, light from light, true God from true God, begotten, not made, of one being with the Father. Through him, through Jesus, all things were made. For us and for our salvation, he came down from heaven." And Nicholas was in the room the first time those words were written out and read aloud. I envy him that one. That would have been an amazing moment to witness. So in these three stories, I see a man who, when I grow up, I want to be like. I want to be like Nicholas. I want to be awake to the needs in my community. I want to be ready to do what I can to meet those needs. I want to be caring enough about people to actually make the sacrifices that I can make. I want to be courageous. I want to be courageous enough to, when it's within my power, run like a fool to the rescue when I have the opportunity, even if I look a bit silly. I want to be honest enough to seek truth, to feel passionately about truth, to stand for truth, not necessarily to get my nose broken, but to, alongside other believers, do the deep work of understanding what I can understand of who God is. I want to be like Nicholas. There's a verse in 1 Corinthians where the Apostle Paul writes to the people in the church in Corinth. He says, "Imitate me as I imitate Christ." Paul was a preacher. He was a writer. He was a wordsmith. He was brilliant with words. But he said to people, don't just do what I tell you to do. Do as I do. He says, I'm doing my best to be like Jesus. I'm doing my best to do what Jesus did. Imitate me when I get that right. I can stand here and I can say, I'm a preacher. I am pretty good with words. I can put a sentence together. I can write a song. But more than anything, I want to be someone who someone wants to be. I want to be someone who someone else wants to be. Like Paul, I want to be like Nicholas. I want to be like Nicholas, and I want to be like Paul because they wanted to be like Jesus. They wanted to be like Jesus, understanding right and wrong, understanding guilt and innocence, standing up for people who were oppressed and in danger. Jesus having courage to get in the face of people who thought they were above the law and who thought they deserved better than everybody else. Like Jesus working together with other people to accomplish great and small things. Like Jesus holding firm to the fact that there is truth and there is lie. Like Jesus holding to his faith in God. Like Jesus sharing the struggles of his own people. Jesus had deeper pockets and more resources than any of us can even imagine. But he belonged to his community. He was part of his people. He was part of his human family. I want to be like Jesus, seeing the needs around him, doing what he can to meet those needs, giving gifts and sharing his wealth. I want to be like Nicholas when I grow up, because Nicholas looks a lot like Jesus. Jesus saw what we needed. We needed a Savior, and he ran to our rescue. He was born in a human body. He had the courage to live a human life. He had the courage to face down the enemy that we cannot defeat on our own. He had the courage to snatch the sword from the hands of death itself and throw it on the ground. Jesus spoke truth even when it was awkward and inconvenient. Jesus gave and gave and gave, and he gave his life, his whole life, every day for us. And that's who I want to be when I grow up. I want to become someone who can say, imitate me as I imitate Christ.